I went through some things for years and years, unhealthy relationships, drug addiction, all kinds of things. So it's definitely a story of survival at this point. The fact that you cannot figure out how to take me, what our relationship should look like, it should be the same as it was before. The only difference is that I'm showing up caring about myself. People don't, they don't know how to deal with that. And I think that's not talked about enough. Telling people what worked and didn't work for you, it's not always going to help someone else, but most of the time they see some kind of result, or they take bits and pieces of what worked for you and they're able to form their own routine of what to eat, what to drink, how much exercise. Why would my doctor's office even write me a prescription if I don't have weight management coverage? Because they don't check. That's your job. You would think it would be the opposite. They don't know if you have weight management coverage because you went in there, made an appointment, and asked for something, and they're making it come true. That's it. I'm Jen. I'm Jen. Long overdue. The next step is a podcast, right? Okay. So people have been messaging me left and right over the last year, and they're saying, Jen, you need to have a podcast. And so I set up this whole background in my house in one of my guest rooms, and then I realized it's not really authentic. It's not who I am. I started it right here. So this is where I'm going to do it, right here. A little background on me. My name is Jennifer. At 45 years of age, I was 221 pounds. I had gone to multiple physicians and doctors trying to get an answer to why I wasn't able to lose the weight. I did the Atkins, I did everything, and nothing seemed to pan out. At the end of the day, all the diets, I would lose a little bit, gain it right back. Nothing controlled my food, noise. It was just dead ends over and over again. After a couple of years on metformin, pretty high dosage, the side effects were awful. So I was switched to a medication. The medication in itself is innovative. It opened a lot of doors for me in the sense that I was able to reduce the inflammation inside my body. I shared my journey on social media, and people were starting to identify with what I was doing and how I was feeling. Um, I always said that I was going to go into this being very vulnerable, authentic. That's where we're at. I have a couple of successful social media accounts, and now I have some brand deals. All of these things came from being myself and sharing my journey to help others. So that's really what inspired me to do this podcast. Throughout this podcast, I will have guests and I will have, people that come on and share their journeys as well. I think that's important because not everybody is the same. We all go through different things. So, but let's go back. Let me take this back a little bit. I have three kids. Almost, well, two of them are adults. The other one is going to be an adult in the next year. Um, I went through some things for years and years, unhealthy relationships, drug addiction, all kinds of things. So it's definitely a story of survival at this point. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of where we're starting at. I live in Austin, Texas, and I'm just a normal person, just like anybody else. But I spent a lot of time and dedication starting to learn these medications and how they worked inside my body. So the GLP-1 content is really what I'm passionate about, but I will touch on other things. I think mental health needs to be addressed for sure. There's a lot of people out there that struggle with mental health after they lose the weight. Throughout the process, a lot of times when our confidence starts to boost, other people feel intimidated or they lose the ability to figure out how to identify with us because they're used to you either being in a bigger body or they're used to you, joining in on things that you no longer indulge in. So this journey is uncomfortable in a lot of ways, and people feel like they don't have anybody. I went through that quite a bit. I couldn't share my success with a lot of people in my immediate circle because the response that I was expecting was not the response that I got. Behind my back, people would say, she's cheating, right? That's a common one. People say, well, you cheated. You took a medication. When you stop the medication, you'll gain it all back. Um, Not everybody's going to be cheering for you. Not everybody. But for for all the negative Nancy's, you're going to find the positive Pollies, if you will. You're going to find the people that are proud of you. People, sometimes people that don't even really know you, right? They've just watched you go from point A to point B, and they're in your corner. It's remarkable. Social media helps that, but can also, cause a lot of problems in your life. Um, at first, my kids were like, Mom, oh my God, please get off social media. My friends and my friends' parents and everybody is seeing you on here and you're talking about things in, blah, blah, blah. And now my kids are like, yeah, yeah, my mom's on social media. She helps people. Um, I've heard multiple times my kids explaining to people what I do, and it's a beautiful thing because they get it. They understand the passion, they identify with it. They see all the people that I help. People, will add my kids on social media and they'll reach out and say, Your mom is this, or, you know, your mom, I'm proud of her. Or even my middle school music teacher reached out to me and she said, you were heavy on my mind last week. And I reached out and I was looking all over the place. I looked on Facebook and she said, I reached out to another student and they said, she talks about weight loss and how important it is to get your protein in your water. And she works with a compound medication or telehealth company. And she's just doing things. And she reached out to me and she said hi and introduced herself and said, Do you remember me? I said, Of course. And I called her and she started crying. And she said, That is so wild that you've been on my head. And then I find out that you're doing this. She said, and it usually opens up the door. She said, I've been on Ozempic for a year. I've been sick, sick, sick. Um, and it's just like this medication, first of all, is, not easily accessible. It isn't. Telehealth companies have really filled those gaps for a lot of people. I think it's a remarkable thing that we're going through right now in the times that we live in. These medications are becoming more available. People are starting to live their lives, and not just always because they're in a smaller body, because they're controlling things inside their body that make them feel more in control. Because for so long we live and we don't, nothing is controlled. The inflammation I was experiencing, I had been to endocrinologist. I had been to, um, what is that, a rheumatologist. I went to a cardiovascular, I forget what the time. I went through so many different processes to get help, and the answer was always the same: lose weight. You got to lose some weight. Okay, I've tried everything. How do I do that? Well, you can try eating less, moving more. Okay, how's that going to reduce the inflammation inside my body? So I dove into inflammatory foods. What can I start decreasing in my diet to help? Um, at 45 years old, at 221 pounds, it's an unrealistic thing. And 5 foot, it's an unrealistic thing for you to tell somebody to move more. It is. Because, all right, so I can walk outside and I can walk 2 miles. When I get back, I pay for it for 4 or 5 days. And then I swell up like a basketball because of the inflammation. So, trying to do what I'm supposed to do and seek out doctors to reduce the inflammation inside my body, I went to them. I paid the price. None of them knew. Or they would want to put me on some kind of medication to help with this. And I was on, one doctor said, maybe you have fibromyalgia. We could start one thing after another. August 11th, 2022. I had already lost 55 pounds. It took me over a year, and I was on a very elevated dose of metformin, and I was sick. When I tell you I was sick, stomach cramps, diarrhea, dry mouth, headaches, dizzy spells. I kept relaying this to the physicians and the nurse practitioners and everybody that was overseeing me, and they kept telling me the same thing over and over again. Well, um, your body's going through some changes. You've lost some weight. There's some things going on. But nobody wanted to give me a solution. The solution came with Manjaro by accident. My doctor said, I don't think I can get your insurance to approve Ozempic. Okay. And he said, but there's a new medication, there's a coupon out. I'd like to try for that one. I really think that that would be something. But even if your insurance denies it right now, you can still get it for $25 a month. And I said, okay, I'm open to it. I'm willing to try it. And that's kind of where it began. That's where it began. I started that again, like I said, August 11th, 2022. And I'm here to tell you that my life at that time was dental, working in a family owned dental practice, managing some real estate or owned properties by my family. As a property manager, I was overwhelmed, living in a bigger body, doing everything I could, restricting things to the point where you could say I was basically omitting things, which is probably one of the worst things that you can do. You'd ever want to cut out anything. You don't want to cut out things out of your diet because what would happen is you would add those foods back in, like me cutting carbs drastically, like cutting them. When I did have something that had a little bit of sugar or artificial sweetener, I would get shaky, nauseated, dizzy, because my body had been without those things. So, through process of elimination, working with a couple of different dietitians at different points, I started listening to my body. And this is something that I talk about quite often. I tell people, listen to your body. If you're craving eggs, it's usually because your body is wanting some protein. Yeah. So, it's there's multiple different things that I could have done, but in essence, I started paying attention to my body. If I ate something and I liked the results, then I would move in a different direction. Well, the same direction, but I would keep going. So I'd say, okay, listen, I like the way I feel. It's great. Now, what can I do to make this better? Lean protein. Okay. So I started working out, started kickboxing. I did that for a couple of months, ended up hurting myself more than anything else. So I started thinking, okay, so the getting out there and working out and doing these things, it might not be something as dramatic, if you will, on my body as kickboxing at 45 years old with a lot of weight on me. I started walking with weights. My doctor then said, hey, Jennifer, you're hurting yourself over and over again, and not to hurt you or hurt your feelings, but the weight that you're carrying is enough. You don't need to add weight right now. And I went, wow, okay. So I stopped, carrying around excess weights, and then I started seeing some results. When it started out, I could only walk for about 15 minutes before I was miserable. It got up to the point where I was walking 45 minutes to an hour, but I was jogging at 45 years of age. That was a big deal. And at that point, I was sitting around the 160s when I started this medication, or 168, 170. I lost 54 pounds in a little over 4 months on Manjaro. Then we went through shortages, and that's when I decided to add compound medications back in because the compound medications started making me feel better. I started feeling more in control. I had more energy, and a lot of things changed for me. So, why a podcast? That's the most common question that I get. Why did you choose to move to a podcast? Because I wanted to be able to reach people more than just TikTok. I wanted to be able to reach people on different genres, different age groups. You guys would have no idea. This journey has been wild. I have people that consistently reach out and they say, you know what? I just want to thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, being who you are authentically, talking to people and telling them it's okay. It's okay. I know you've tried multiple things. Let's move on to the next step. Um, obviously, there's going to be some issues. Sometimes, like I said earlier, your relationships change with people. You don't expect that. It's uncomfortable. Um, when you start feeling better about yourself, sometimes it can threaten other people. That is a tough pill to swallow. Um, I had a bariatric doctor reach out to me one time after I made a post because a lady messaged me and she said, Jen, I'm struggling. I've lost 75 pounds, and my husband told me he is not attracted to me anymore. And I said, oh my goodness. So I was talking to another friend of mine who's currently also on a GLP-1 medication, but she has done the gastric sleeve. And she said, yeah, they actually give us like a pamphlet. And I said, what? She said, they give us a pamphlet. And I said, what do you mean a pamphlet? She said, they give us a pamphlet and it explains to us that once you lose some weight, other people will have a hard time with that. And I thought, wow, this is a really big issue. Like, this is huge. That's when I started looking into that. I started realizing that your weight loss, your self confidence boost, the fact that you get up on a Sunday and you no longer have the black yoga pants and the baggy t shirts with the baseball cap with the greasy hair or just a ponytail with greasy hair, no makeup, lucky if you brush your teeth, that doesn't threaten people. It doesn't intimidate people. But when you get up and you brush your teeth, you wash your face, you make your bed, you get dressed, you do your hair, you do your makeup, people see that you are starting to put more into yourself and it threatens them in different ways, or they can't relate to you anymore because your self confidence is allowing you to feel less needy from them in some instances. It is so crazy to me, the world that we live in right now, the relationships that we have. You can really start to see that some of these relationships are synthetic. Some of these relationships are based on you not feeling good about yourself, you being dependent on other people. When you take that equation out of it, it kind of is mind blowing. It really is. People need you to not feel good about your, it's so wild. It is. And I talk to my mother about this quite often. I said, isn't it crazy that people that I used to go do things with, I feel like they looked at me like I was the ugly friend, right? Because I was living in a bigger body. And now that I've lost this weight, I've kept it off for almost 2 full years. Their only question is, God, you've lost a lot of weight. Are you good? Like, do you feel okay? Like, they give you the, almost like they're putting you down because you've lost the weight. They don't understand. You didn't do this weight loss and change, start activating discipline in your diet, start learning what fuels your body, and breaking down things, getting it out of your diet that just stores fat. And you talk to people about this and they're like, you know what I mean? Okay, like that's all you want to talk about these days. Will you ask me how I'm doing? I'm telling you, I'm doing great. Um, and no, I'm not sick because I lost a bunch of weight. You really want to just look at them and repeat what they said back, because what they're doing is nothing but hurting you. But then you get to a point where you're like, you're not hurting me anymore. It doesn't hurt me. The fact that you cannot figure out how to take me, what our relationship should look like, it should be the same as it was before. The only difference is that I'm showing up caring about myself. People don't, they don't know how to deal with that. And I think that's not talked about enough, because somebody who does have a pretty good reach on social media and have a good following, you would be so surprised at how many people reach out and the relationships are struggling because people don't know how to relate to them. It's a them problem. It's a them problem. Please understand, it's not your fault because you love yourself for the first time. It's not. They are making a decision to treat you a certain way because they are uncomfortable with your success. They're uncomfortable with the way you feel about yourself, because I don't need people as much as I used to. I don't need validation. I don't need to open the door to see that somebody's still there. I don't need that anymore because I did this on my own. I want people to know that, first of all, they have options. You have options. I don't know what's going to happen in the world of telehealth as far as compound medications go. Um, right now, there's just so much going on. People are scared. I understand. I think the sad part is that people who have approved prior authorizations from their insurance companies still can't get the milligram and or medication that their insurance is supposed to cover So they choose to go the route of compound, right? I mean, it makes sense. It's available. Compounded versions of these medications are also a lot cheaper. Sometimes they're a lot cheaper than what people have to pay to get these medications. But at the end of the day, they don't have access to even get the medications from their, approved pharmacies. And I'm talking about the brand. So it's just in the world we live in today, there's a lot of stuff going on in that, area that doesn't even make sense. So hopefully soon we'll see how that plays out. Um, but really, why a podcast? I want to be able to relay this message to people of all genres, all backgrounds, whether you use TikTok, whether you use Facebook, if you have no social media and you're driving in your car, whatever the case may be, you're not too old, you're not too young. All of these different things are super important with these medications. Um, they control things inside your body that you never even, some cases, never even knew was an issue. I have people that reach out all the time and they say, I didn't understand that what I was experiencing was inflammation until it was gone. That's huge. That's huge. I didn't understand that by removing certain things out of my diet, that it would be able to cut down on the amount of fluid I retained. People that have gone through to dietitians, people that have gone to, obesity specialists, doctors, weight management coaches, all kinds of things. But that, also that's another thing about managed care. Totally different subject, but doctors these days don't have much time to spend with you. And that's also kind of where we're failing people. Right now, they make these medications almost impossible to get. And we're living through a time right now where they're trying to make that even harder as the prices go up, right? So, but why a podcast? Really, it's because I want to be able to reach people, but I want to share my journey. Sharing my journey on social media has made a big difference for a lot of people that are on these medications. People don't know things. They don't know because their doctors go by a scripted version, or um, one lady was on the medication for 2 months. She had already lost 20 pounds. She was already starting to feel good about herself, but she kept getting injection site reactions. Somebody that's been on this medication for 2 years knows that that is a common thing. But her doctor told her that that was an allergic reaction and should no longer be on this medication. She said, I'm so sad that my journey has to end. And when I told her that that is actually a common thing, she couldn't believe it. She said, well, why doesn't my doctor know that? Um, I have no idea because it is something that's talked about pretty openly. My physician was the one that told me it was actually common. A lot of his patients experience that. Maybe try some Benadryl cream, or, he gave me a bunch of options. It doesn't happen every time, but it does happen sometimes, but it is a common thing. So that's another thing. Sharing my journey is important. Sharing my journey with people is validation, but more importantly, it's helping other people. People reach out to me every day and they thank me. They say, oh my gosh, thank you so much, because I didn't know that there were certain ways, certain injection sites that may affect you a little bit better or worse. I didn't know there was a time of day. I didn't know that made a difference. And here I am for the first time in 3 months, and I'm not sick. I don't have diarrhea. I don't have vomiting. I uh, I actually feel okay. I walked around all day yesterday. This lady said, I walked around all day yesterday just waiting for the medication to kind of kick in like it normally did. By the way, she would do her injection and she would have to block out a couple of days, right? Because she had uncontrollable diarrhea and vomiting, never knew it was going to hit, was afraid to eat. That's no way to live. We don't get that kind of information to, we don't give, should I say, that kind of information to people who are considered patients. That's what we need to be talking about. We need to be telling people and be, advocating, not only just advocating for what worked for us and sharing it, we need to be helping other people advocate for themselves so that they can start to learn how to eat for themselves that works really well on this medication. People don't realize that. They're like, okay, protein, that's great. Just about everything you eat has protein in it. But if you sit there and eat 40 pieces of cheese, you're not really doing yourself any good, right? So, sharing, giving examples, talking about what to eat, going in deeper uh, than that, recipe, like those kinds of things are important because people just feel like shell shocked to an extent. So, part of that's another reason actually why I wanted to do a podcast is because I want people to know that listen, if you do this but omit this, it's going to make a huge difference. You have no idea the amount of people that will reach out and they'll say, "Hey, look, man, I don't know what I did wrong, uh, but I've got this, horrible insomnia." Okay, I've been on this medication for 2 years, and when I was injecting at night, I had horrible insomnia the night of injection and the day after. So what I started doing is I started injecting early in the day instead of having a bunch of protein in my stomach. I did it on an empty stomach, and my side effects were gone. And people are like, "What?" And I no longer experience side effects. How did you learn that? I learned it from somebody else, and I thought I was willing to try it. And they're like, "Okay." When I share that experience on social media, people reach out to me and they go, "Oh my God, Jen." And then every now and then somebody says, "Oh, that was even worse." And I'm like, "Okay, so what can we do different?" Um, it's about helping other people, and not everything that you go through is going to be identifiable to somebody else or work for somebody else. So the most important thing to remember is sharing your journey, not medical advice, telling people what worked and didn't work for you. It's not always going to help someone else, but most of the time they see some kind of result, or they take bits and pieces of what worked for you and they're able to form their own routine of what to eat, what to drink, how much exercise. One lady messaged me and she said, okay, you say try to do 100 grams of protein, 125, 100, but try to get 100, right? Okay, so we can maintain some muscle. You got it. You say try to get like a minimum of 100 ounces of water a day. I think it's important to stay hydrated, especially on a medication that's going to constipate you. So yeah, I do say that. And then she said, but you say 30 minutes worth of walking. I do. Walk out your front door, set your watch for 15 minutes, turn around and walk back. Usually, if you're walking at a pretty steady pace, you're going to knock out at least a mile, mile and a half, maybe even two. And she said, okay, all right. Well, I started that, right, 3 months ago. She said the first 3 months on this medication, she said I lost 14.4 pounds. And I was like, okay, I mean, good amount of weight loss. The next 3 months after I saw your video that I saved and sent it to my brother and blah, 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 she said I lost 27.5 pounds. And I said, and what were you doing different? And she said, eating more protein, drinking more water, and walking for 30 minutes. Versus what? Not being accountable, not showing discipline in my life. This is the reason why I share on social media, because I want people to understand that they have more than one perspective. Not everything that you see is going to work for you. But if you can pick up bits and pieces, that's what happened with me. That's what happened with me. People sit there and go, how did you know all of this? Like, I mean, your background is dental. I mean, come on, man. Like, how do you know these things? Process of elimination, but I don't want you to have to trudge through the mud like I did. It was a miserable experience, rewarding, but it was a miserable experience. You don't want to start playing these games when you're on 7.5 or 10 milligrams of Manjaro. You don't. You don't. Because sometimes the side effects you experience on 2.5, on 10 milligrams, it's a different game. It's a different game. It's a lot more intense. And I was pretty desperate. I was desperate to find something or figure out a way to stay on the medication but not have to throw up, not have to feel nauseated all the time, not have to feel, the severe fatigue that comes along with these medications. Sharing this through a podcast, social media is great, but sharing this on multiple platforms when people are driving, or like I said before, not everybody uses TikTok. That's a huge benefit. Huge. Probably one of the most rewarding things I've ever been able to successfully plan for. because I want people to know that they have options. There are things that will not work, but there's things that will work. My way is not always the right way. It's not, but it's the right way for me. I am a success story. A lot of people are a success story. I just want people to be able to realize that there are so many other things out there, options. There's so many ways that you can eat, change a little bit of your eating. You can reduce some fatigue by changing the time of day that you inject. When I say that, people go, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Now, you might still experience some fatigue. Seemed to hit me a lot more when I moved up in milligram. Like the first 24 hours, I felt like just out of it, completely out of it. People would ask me questions and I was there, but I wasn't really there. Changing the time of day I did my injection and the location of my body where I injected the medication was a game changer. It changed everything for me. I went from being sick to well. I never experience side effects. If I do, usually it's because I eat something wrong. And I know right away that doing it this way is probably not the best, right? So, podcast, reaching people, explaining things, going into detail, talking about mental health, that needs to be addressed. These are all the things that I plan on covering. Also, having some guests, some doctors, a lady with, she's a pharmacy benefits manager, supervisor for a pretty good firm is going to be one of the guests. Possibly a celebrity guest that, like all of these people that you can identify with from, like I said, different age groups, different genres, not all female. It's important to, spend some time. There's not a lot of guys that post on social media about these medications, but I think that's important because I think people want to be able to identify with somebody that is close to their, closer to them. So that's another reason. I think another thing that is not commonly talked about and needs to be addressed is the pharmacy benefit management system as a whole, right? Um, I talked about this a little bit earlier in the podcast, but this is another thing that I'm passionate about is the fact that you have somebody middlemaning, if you will, making decisions that a doctor has already made, going against them, not covering a medication because it might be, a step up thing. As somebody who had to fight and fight to get a prior authorization approval, it is a nasty process. It is. It's a nasty, nasty process. Even when you meet the requirements, as I did, they still don't want to cover the medication. They have this step therapy clause, right? And this is something I always share on social media. Before you even contact your doctor, before you make the appointment, okay, you need to contact your insurance company. You need to ask them simple questions. Do I have weight management coverage? Majority of the time, you don't. Now, some plans do have the weight management coverage. Most insurance companies, in my experience, do not. They don't. People reach out and every day and they go, I mean, like it never fails. They'll say, I went after watching you on live and I made an appointment with my doctor. Okay. I want to interrupt them right there and say, if you watched me on live, hopefully you called your insurance company. Okay. But I don't. And they'll say, I watched your live. I made an appointment with my doctor. I took off work. I went to the appointment. He wrote me a prescription for Wegovy. I took it to the pharmacy. I waited, so excited, ready to get this taken care of. I pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars per month for my insurance. And the pharmacist or the pharmacy tech said, unfortunately, you're going to need a prior authorization for approval for this medication. I went home defeated, 4 days back and forth with my doctor's office trying to, and it was denied. Do you have weight management coverage? Oh, I have no idea. Okay. So then the person contacts their insurance company and finds out they don't have weight management coverage. So that prescription would have never been approved. So now you've taken off work, you've paid your copay, you went to the doctor only to find out what a waste. What a waste. You have a prescription for a medication, Wegovy, that's what, 15, $1,600 for a 1 month supply that you'll never be able to pick up unless you pay for it. Even the manufacturer's coupons that they have from time to time, not enough to even put a dent in it. But then on the flip side, even if you were to go through all the legwork and get this taken care of, the craziest part of it is this. You go through all of these things and the medication's been in shortage more than it's been available. So that's another thing. People will reach out and they'll say, okay, so my insurance, I have weight management coverage. My doctor wrote the prescription for Wegovy. I'm so excited. I took it to the pharmacy and they said they hadn't had it in 4 months. We're talking about Walgreens. 4 months. They haven't had the starting dose of Wegovy. She said, what do I do now? Last thing you want to tell somebody is, this is common. People call me and they say, hey, look, this is where I live. Can you help me find the... There's nothing worse than going through all the legwork, getting on a medication, and you can't even find it. So then you get upset with your doctor and you're like, why are they even writing these prescriptions? Why are they? Because you asked for it. That's why. Yeah. Or the flip side is the lady that had no weight management coverage. She said, why would my doctor's office even write me a prescription if I don't have weight management coverage? Because they don't check. That's your job. You would think it would be the opposite. Mm-mm. No, they don't know what your formulary covers and or your benefits. They don't know if you have weight management coverage because you went in there, made an appointment, and asked for something, and they're making it come true. That's it. Make sure you know what your insurance is willing to cover. Trying to gain access to a medication that your insurance would never cover in the beginning. That's why I tell people to call their insurance companies. That's it. That's all. It is so important that you know your plan. People sign up with what's affordable. Obviously, we look at an insurance plan and we want to sign up with an insurance plan that has the most coverage for the least amount of money, right? That's it. A friend of mine 2 years ago, at the end of 2022, he had already had I guess it was Cigna, but anyway, had an approved prior authorization for Manjaro. She was 3 months in on her journey, and it was time to pick her new plan. Time to pick her new plan. So she contacted me and said, these are my options. I said, okay. I gave her what I would have done, but she decided to go with something that she thought was a little bit more beneficial. She's on other medications. Great. She didn't look to see if there was a pharmacy deductible, right? So when she went to fill her prescription in January with her new insurance, she had an $8,000 deductible. She said, what do I do now? There's nothing I can do. And I said, well, and she said, I'm not going to be able to stay on these medications. I can't afford that. And I said, oh, I don't think anybody can. And she said, I just feel such a void. Like, I feel such a loss. My journey on these medications is going to have to stop. And I said, well, that's why it's so important, you guys, to pay attention to certain things also when you're signing up for insurance, especially if you're already on specific medications. Call your insurance. Call them. Ask them, is it going to affect me? I'm on this medication. They'll give you that information. And then there's been other instances where people will transfer over. It may not be a deductible thing, but the insurance companies don't want to pay for these medications. And I'm referring to GLP-1 medications. They don't want to. They're expensive. They don't want to pay for them. Doesn't matter what you do. You're going to have to fight. Have to use the step therapy clause if you have step therapy. Most plans do. That whole thing where you've got to try these medications that are already approved on your formulary, and then you have to, see how those goes first. And if you have a reaction, then they might. That's pathetic and sick, in my opinion. It really is. You're going to wait for somebody to have a reaction to a medication and or when they told you what medication they were taking. It just doesn't even make sense. But it makes sense in the world of, all the money behind it, for sure. I just don't think there's enough. I don't think there's enough people advocating And the employers, some of them don't even realize by adding the weight management coverage. There's another lady that reached out to me back in January and she said, I talked to my employer in December about weight management coverage, and I wanted you to know that I did what you said to do in your live, just at least talk to them about it. And by adding that on our plan, it went up $1.11. And I said, what? She said, yeah. Even my employer was shocked because they thought for sure it was going to be, something that they couldn't offer. But we were all just flabbergasted. So we have access to these medications now because I spoke up in December. That's the kind of stuff I talk about. That's what I stand behind is you have to advocate for yourself, your current situation. If you're told no, okay, but what is the reason? And if the reason is something that you believe is unfairly, or unfair or unjust or doesn't make sense, then dig into it, dig a little deeper, try to figure out what the issue is. Is there anything that would, offset that? Is there anything they're specifically looking for to get the formulary exception or to lead to the prior authorization approval? I got denied 3 times by my insurance, and I've talked about this, but I already met the requirement for the coverage, but they kept denying me. And then they gave me like a little 6-month timeout, right? And then the doctor that I was using said, let's try it again. I'll highlight the fact that you've tried these other medications. At that time, I had 4 medications that I'd already tried on the approved formulary, and got a response back in 40 minutes, approval for a year the first time. I was floored. Like, what? But again, you have to remember during that process, I was on the original savings card with Manjaro, and it made the medication $25 a month, whether you were approved or denied. People don't have that option now, which, I'd also like to lead into the fact that compound medications, this company's filing suit on this, and the FDA, like all this stuff that's going on right now is crazy. These medications are very much still in shortage, which makes this whole thing nuts. I live in Austin, Texas. These medications all over the United States are no longer in shortage. I have not been able to pick up a box of 10 milligram in a month. They messaged me on Friday and said they should have it Monday. I've been through this 3 times. I'm not holding my breath. But I have access to compound medications to keep myself going. So I'm one of those people that my insurance is willing to pay for it, and it's not in shortage. So why am I struggling to get it if it's not in shortage, right? Keywords, not in shortage. Makes no sense. Very much still in shortage. Very much. We know it. When I talk on my lives and I have a couple hundred people in there, somebody always, at least 1 or 2, when I say these medications are supposedly no longer in shortage, people come alive because we know that that's not the case. It's not. They're very much still in shortage. Mind blowing, to say the very least. Advocate for yourself. If you go to pick up the medication, it's not there. They have a link. The FDA has a shortage link where you can report a shortage. Report it. That's the communication they're asking for. I don't think enough people were doing that. And other reasons why, they were, whatever, lobbying or trying to get these medications removed, which absolutely makes 0 sense. You have to report it. That's about advocating for yourself. Another thing is, whenever I was deciding to do a podcast, because it brings me back to the question, people are always like, you should do a podcast. You should do a podcast. And for the longest time, I said, why? Why do a podcast? I go live every night on social media, and sometimes I'll stream 2 different platforms. Why a podcast? And they said, because it would be so much easier to be able to listen to you on the way home from work, so I didn't miss anything. And then I thought, why is what I'm saying like the Holy Grail? Why do people cling to what I'm saying so much? Because it's helped so many by me being 100% vulnerable, being very open, the side effects I experienced, what I could and couldn't tolerate, the relationship changes in your personal life, the changes that go on inside your body, Physical, mental is huge. Nobody talks about the mental part of it. Some people touch on it, but there's a whole, there needs to be a whole couple of sessions about changes in your mental health. It's not just about how other people treat you. Forget that. Forget it. It's about the changes in your mental health, how you view yourself, how long it takes your brain to catch up. I was going into stores and I was buying at 116 pounds and I was trying on fours and sixes that were drowning me. Something went off in my head in the dressing room at Old Navy was my mom was standing out there bringing me twos and zeros. For a moment, I was scared to get in those size zero because I had not given myself a chance to pre-program the fact that I was a size zero. It was like this weird fear because you have to understand also when you live in a bigger body for multiple years, some people decades, you've never been able to shop at certain stores. There's certain stores in the mall that you can't go in. It would go up to a size 16 if you were lucky. I know people that said they were happy to lose a little bit of weight to get below 200. Or some people said for 30 years, 30, multiple people, for over 2, 3 decades, I have been over 200 pounds at 5'5", 5'6", 5'7". And now the scale says 167 pounds. And I know what the scale says, but I don't see myself. What's wrong with me? People tell me, you look great. You look healthy. Your skin looks good because of the hydration. You're, wow. They're just shocked. The support of people, right? You look so great. It is an uncomfortable thing because we hid, even though we went out and did public things, we still didn't have the confidence to do the extra things that really make us feel better about ourselves because we didn't feel good about ourselves. Not in every case, not in all of them. Um, my daughter's a good example of that. Whenever she was, in a bigger body, she still took just as many pictures. She still loved herself just as much. But behind the scenes is when she would say, Mom, I'm so tired of this. Like, I'm tired of being overweight. And this is a child who didn't overeat. This is somebody who, it was, PCOS just poof, started when she was younger. She also had some other things. And she said, I'm so tired of living like this. Um, and she was able to seek help and she was able to get like 75 pounds off her body. It changes so many people's lives because it treats things inside, right? What the cause of obesity, the fact that people don't have access to these medications because they're in shortage, right? And then to turn around and flip it and say they're not in shortage, mind blowing. Mind blowing. I don't even think people could go lobby and stand up and talk about the shortages with a straight face. I couldn't. I couldn't stand in front of hundreds of thousands or whatever, especially not something that was being televised and make comments, blanket statements of untruths, right? These medications are no longer in short. Do you know how hard that must be for those people? I'm sure they're paid really well to do those kinds of things, but that's not the case. I'm not going to take any amount of money to stand up there and lie. That's got to be difficult. That's what I want to talk about. That's what I want to talk about. I want to touch on mental health. I want to talk about, the different options that you have, the fact that people are going out of their way to try to make that less available. I understand the Eli Lilly, the Novo Nordisk, the big pharma companies behind it because people are no longer going to pay for those medications is what they're thinking, right? Little do they know that people aren't able to gain access to those medications because their insurance companies are fighting back and finding a reason not to cover it. A lot of the people, like I said, like myself, approved prior authorization. I'm good for quite a while. Have no access to the milligram that I'm looking for. And I live in a big city. People, I can't even imagine. One lady told me in my live the other night, she said, have you ever thought about contacting your local pharmacies? I said, yeah, I've heard that before. A friend of mine on social media used to tell people, like, try your hospital pharmacies and things like that. Um, You know how crazy that is? These medications aren't in shortage, right? A big chain of pharmacies that I use can't get it, but they're not in shortage. It's a tough pill to swallow. I think it's important to highlight all of the options that people have, but more importantly, to be a coach, right? To be a support system, because there's a lot of people that take these medications, they even hide it from their significant other. I understand the reasons behind it. I think a lot of people do. Also, if people aren't hiding it from their significant other, they're hiding it from their coworkers, they're hiding it from their, and that's fine. There's no judgment. But because these medications are very much viewed as cheating, which is so sad that we live in a world where it's viewed as cheating, but that's very real. They're also viewed as, taking the easy way out. People that make those kinds of statements really anger me. And for the simple reason that I don't know the percentage of people that have tried various things to reduce, inflammation, reduce weight, have done, but I know that I can speak on my own journey. And I can tell you that over the last 8 years, I have tried everything. Everything. I did the South Beach diet. I did Atkins. I joined Weight Watchers. Um, oh, on and on. I did a liquid diet thing. I also took a pill that, was supposed to do this. I was back in the thing, would make your heart race. Um, I mean, I literally have done everything I'm supposed to do. Went through my doctor. At that time, I had a different doctor. Tried various things. Even joined a healthy eating support class, and did that when my daughter was about 6 years old. For 6 months, be like a mom's group. Kids would play. We would walk. None of it worked because I was told that less calories, um, more walking and exercise, and that's just not real. It's not for a lot of people, especially people that have things going on inside their body that contribute to being obese. There's a lot of things that go along. When I was diagnosed with fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver is what they said. My doctor said, the next stage could be cirrhosis. Do you understand? You're talking about the chance of getting cancer. And my insurance company, all of that was in the paperwork, and the insurance company was still fighting back. Still fighting back. Uh, Patient is not a full type 2 diabetic. You have to be type 2 to gain access to these medications. No, you don't. No, you don't. This medication is written off label just like every single medication. There are medications for eyes that you could put in the ears. There's so many different medications available, but they might have one medication they use for four different things. But insurance will cover it, probably because it's not so expensive, right? Or it's not so new, trendy. They have their difference. The doctor will write a prior authorization asking for the insurance company to approve it based on the patient's needs, physical, whatever the case may be. And the pharmacy benefit managers have been put in a position where they can make a decision trumping a doctor. Mind blowing. Mind blowing. You just went against a obesity specialist, a weight management physician who went to school for all those years, that is prescribing something to help treat things inside the body of a patient. They've already done lab work. They've already done, and then somebody who has no medical background makes a decision in patient care. I'll never understand it. I never will. It makes zero sense to me at all. But they have that ability. They have that ability. They have that ability to, and here's the worst part. The worst part is without even consulting the doctor, they will recommend a different medication. They will. No medical background. They will recommend, have they tried this? Have they tried this? It's just sad. It is. It's sad. So, without a doubt, we know there needs to be some changes in our healthcare setup, guidelines, practices. Give doctors, nurse practitioners, people in positions that are able to prescribe a medication based on the need of the patient to give them their license back, so to speak, to give them the right to make the decision. The insurance company should not be able to make a decision when a doctor has already validated the reasons. Now, if an insurance company wants to approach a specific patient and say, have you done labs? Have you done this? Have you done that? I think that's okay. Just to make sure that, process of elimination, this is the medication for the patient. But I don't think that they should have the ability to make recommendations of other medications because they're already on the formulary. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. I think that doctors should be able to prescribe medications, and insurance companies should follow suit and cover the medications. That's just how I feel about it. We're just failing a lot of people. And I think getting rid of compound options is wild because, like I said before, these medications are very much still in shortage, and we know that. It's been proven time and time again. I just don't know what it's going to take because reporting it to the FDA, it's just not enough. By doing a podcast, it gives you the ability to cover it all, right? To cover it all. There's not one solution to health. People go through things. People live in bigger bodies for so long. The mental health aspect of it is very difficult. Some people adjust. Some people, it takes quite a while. For me, it took a while for me to be able to look in the mirror and identify, even putting on clothes, like buying t-shirts that were smalls and they were too big. I would do that, and my mom's like, because you've lost so much weight. And then I think there needs to be more advocacy or more people sharing their experiences in these, because people reach out and they go, hey, nobody talks about this but you. And that's sad. Like, I do see people on live sometimes talking about their experience, their journeys, and they go into that. But I think there needs to be more focus on the mental health aspect of when you lose 52% of your body weight, which is what I did. I struggled. I struggled when people would give me compliments. I felt like all of them were backhanded, right? Because I was like, why are they approaching me? Why are they saying I look great? All these things run through your head. The mental health aspect of it is not addressed enough. And I definitely want to cover some of that. Absolutely. Because people are very in need of that information on how to deal with that, how to deal with the compliments, how to deal with the backhanded compliments, um, how to identify what is, a good, healthy relationship with people in your life. If they're supportive, that's great. They should be, if they care about you at all. They should be supportive because you've taken the step to change your life. And it is life changing. It is. And like I said before, not just because you're living in a smaller body, it's because of the way that you view yourself, the discipline that you put in, the decisions that you made, the control that you've experienced in your diet, the relationships and how they've changed. And hopefully, most of them, for the majority of the journey, they have blossomed, they have grown, they have made it better. These are all different aspects of this journey that need to be shared so that people know, I'm not the only one dealing with this. I'm not the only one that has to go through these struggles. That's why a podcast was 100% necessary, is to give other people options, but to give them validation. And I want to share this. Somebody said this to me probably a year and a half ago, and it never really resonated with me until probably about 6 months ago. If somebody is unhappy or your changes affect them and they're not clapping for you and supportive, maybe they're not supposed to be in your life forever. Or maybe you should pull back away from that relationship, because for every person that is against you, there are 25 that are for you. That's commonly what people ask me on my social media accounts. How do you must have thick skin. Not everybody is going to be happy for you. They're not. Not everybody is going to applaud you for all the changes that you made because it's just, like I said, yeah, okay, it's weight, but it's all right. That's not it. All the other changes that go along with it, not everybody's going to be supportive. So therefore, not everybody is supposed to stay in your life. Maybe, yeah. Whether it's jealousy, envy, or frustration, um, because they are able to identify you or with you when you're like this. So whenever you make changes and they see you, not everybody's going to clap for you. So be prepared for that if you're not experiencing that yet. Be prepared for that. But like I said earlier, when people ask me that on social media, how do you deal with all the people that are tearing you up and saying, you have a little bit of an Ozempic face, or when people say, God, you looked so good when you were in a bigger body or whatever, most of the time I don't say anything. I don't even respond. It's not worth it. That's what they're probably seeking is some kind of, you know what I mean? They're not for you, they're against you in a way. My journey has been 3 years long. It has. 2 years on this medication, but a year prior to this is really when I started. Um, it hasn't always been sunshine and rainbows. I built a support system, a really good support system. Uh, there's a lot of people, like I said earlier, that go through this journey alone, but I want to share my experiences and I want people to be able to realize that they have options, what those options look like. People that are sick no longer have to just struggle with being sick. Um, those are all the things that I really want to talk about on my podcast. And those are things that need to be talked about more. They really do. Because people that have been on this medication for 6 months will pop up in my live stream and they're like, I had no idea that I could change my injection site or the time of day. My doctor said, you do this, you do that. We're not trying to go against doctors. At least I'm not. I'm not trying to offset any physician. God knows they struggle as it is fighting insurance and everything else. But I just don't think people understand that there are other ways to go about things that are not explained for various reasons. But I feel like we're going to uncover and open up a whole lot of things that are going to be eye opening for people and help them in their journey on these medications. And then after, hopefully, we can address some of the relationship changes. And it's been a struggle. So I figured this was the best place to start.